All right, Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, we're starting. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. رب زدني علما رب زدني علما رب زدني علما يا حي يا قيوم أرحم الراحمين وصلى اللهم على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. All right, if we're all good, inshallah, we're gonna continue with the flashes, the 20th flash on sincerity. So we kind of finished the fourth cause on how we can be sincere. That's what our topic is about. And there was a question that was asked, how come the people of guidance are losing that attitude of being sincere in what they're doing? And how is it that the people who are not in the people of guidance, how come they are more into, find that unity amongst themselves? And just to recap a little bit of the fourth cause, which we spoke about in terms of, let me just look. Yeah, it was about the being short-sighted and far-sighted. And although there's lofty goals that the people of guidance have, but then they lose track of how they are achieving towards their high, with their connected goals, that they're going towards the realization of the absolute truth. So the means maybe would involve losing the feelings of other beings or who they are having the conversations with. And the ego kind of comes in, where it seems to be that I, as a being, if I'm trying to share my ideas with any individual, as if I'm holding the absolute truth, whereas I'm just having the absolute truth is only my personal relationship with the absolute source. So it is a personal individual relationship that I have to be concerned with. But in terms of sharing the ideas, I have to be mindful of the level of the individual I'm talking to. So the means, the way I am sharing the idea, all those conditions have to be looked into. And the example analogy that was given was a driver who is just ignoring all the rules of the road conditions, whereas and not taking into, although the destination is identified and it's a good destination, like somebody maybe has to go and help their mom, for example, and drive over to her house, so that's a good thing that's there. But when the way that the driver is using and bypassing all the, just ignoring all the other cars and just focusing on getting to the destination without looking at the right path, like how they are going towards that path. So that was something that we need to keep in mind. So both the destination, having that lofty goal, is important, as well as the means, how we are going towards that goal, is important as well. And so somebody Maria highlighted the last paragraph of that fourth cause, and we can just read. I mean, we did kind of touch upon it, but let me read it again. So the cure and remedy for this serious disease is to be proud of the company of all those traveling the path of truth in accordance with the principle of love for God's sake, to follow them and defer leadership to them. The cure and remedy for this serious disease is to be proud of the company of all those traveling the path of truth, in accordance with the principle of love, the principle of love for God's sake, to follow them and defer leadership to them, and to consider whoever is walking on God's path to be probably better than oneself, thereby breaking the ego and regaining sincerity. Salvation is also to be had from that disease by knowing that an ounce of deeds performed in sincerity is preferable to a ton performed without sincerity, and by preferring the status of a follower to that of a leader, with all the danger and responsibility that the status of a leader involves. Thus, sincerity is to be had, and one's duties of preparation for the hereafter may be correctly performed. So this is kind of the conclusion for the fourth cause, where the author shared what the cure and remedy for the people of guidance should be or must be, where everybody is towards their journey in life, towards preparing themselves for the hereafter, and whatever things that we are doing, however the conversations we are having and the sharing of that ideas, or every act that we do has to be sincere, which means that it has to pertain to establish my relationship with my Lord, as it says that towards the path of love for God, the principle of love for God's sake. So it's not really to be pleasing the individuals, although that is also something that happens and it's nothing wrong with that, but the main focus has to be for the way my Lord wants me to be, for his pleasure, which means my relationship, establishing my relationship with my source of existence, my Lord. So, and the example, and the further, let's go to it says, consider whoever is walking on God's path to be probably better than oneself. So whoever is on the same path, that straight path that we spoke about last time, the path that is in recognition of who my Lord is, so everybody's relationship with their Lord. So allowing the other person or the other individuals who are in that path, one should not be judgmental. I would say, from what I understand from this, is that there should be no judgmental, but to have a good opinion, as long as they are, they share the same absolute truth as, me, myself, or anybody else. So just give the benefit of the doubt and let them be, and give them the preference. So that allows me to be somebody who is going towards the sincere option, and the sincerity is for my relationship with my Lord. So that breaks my ego, as if I am the one who is always right and there's nobody else can be right. So that breaks that attitude, and sincerity is gained. So salvation is also to be had from that disease by knowing that an ounce of deeds performed in sincerity is preferable to a ton performed without sincerity. I think that's pretty straightforward to understand the quality, or how my relationship, how that is, if it's performed sincerely, that is with the recognition that I'm not imposing myself or as being the author or the source of anything, then that becomes a sincere relationship. That if I know my position, that I am a created being and I'm in need of being given all the qualities that my whoever provides them to me. And of course, the preferring the status of a follower to that of a leader, because becoming a leader has, that there's that slippery state that one who kind of goes into a leader kind of position is able, would may start thinking, hey, I am the one who is doing all this. I'm in charge. So I kind of become, yes, as Faria said, I become like a mini lord kind of thing in that relationship. And the sincerity is kind of lost. It's easier for that position to lose the sincerity. Faria, would you like to say anything? Or
yeah, it's a very interesting and deep subject matter as far as for all of us. I mean, I'm speaking for myself, checking in myself in terms of really where am I at. I think it's all about starting with what my position in this universe is, and from there I can go on and make sense of everything else. So once I develop a worldview for myself, then this is how I would also communicate with creation around me. That's how I would communicate with everything else. Well, with the cognizance that we're all mirrors to each other. We're all mirrors to divine qualities, so nothing belongs to us. And yeah, I was also pondering a little more on this leadership side of things, but inshallah, I think once we move on, things should clear up a little bit. But yeah, just like Austin pointed out, it's sometimes we jump easily into roles because what we do in life sometimes, everything is so intertwined. We cannot separate religious life, this life, that life, no. And so anything that we take on, it requires to be really mindful of, what is at stake here. How are my dealings? How are my transactions going on? Where, okay, I can say, yeah, this is what I do for a living. Let's say that's how I win my bread. That's how people speak. But even within that, there's a lot of, I think, things that we need to assess, inshallah. I'm speaking to myself for myself. So, and I think that's the training also, to definitely, I don't know, I was thinking about this whole leadership roles. Your hand really tired. I'm so sorry. I didn't see it. Yeah, I mean, this leadership roles and everything, it's good to train yourself to get there or take on that responsibility, but just be very careful. I think the step training, this how the order in the universe is set up, that if you train yourself, inshallah, that's the prayer, and then I think things should set up. Thank you. Thanks, bro. Sorry about that.
thank you, Fariha.
You see his hand.
Is there anybody else who would like to comment or add anything to this before we move on to the fifth cause? Asfa, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much. Everything seems quite clear, but I don't know why, somehow, maybe I'm thinking deep into this one phrase that's actually really catching my attention, which is, and to consider in the third line, and to consider whoever is walking on God's path to be probably better than oneself. Like I'm kind of, I understand, like, definitely whoever's in God's path, yes, he is going in the right direction, but to consider someone better than oneself, like, even if this is how I was thinking, so I'm in the right path, and I'm not trying to be judgmental, but do I need to consider them to be better than oneself? Maybe it could be myself. Maybe I am more in the right path than the other ones. Like, I'm not trying to make comparisons, but I'm trying to really understand this phrase, like what the author is trying to, what point he's trying to make here. in terms of, I understand not being judgmental towards the other person, but to consider them better, not even knowing what the genuinity, sorry, can't even say that word, of their actions are. So that being said, I'm not sure if I'm confusing you, but I'm trying to understand, why do I have to come to a point to figure out, or to make that statement that they're probably better than I. So that's what my confusion is. If someone can clear that out, that would be great. Please let me know if that was confusing. I can try to rephrase it. Thank you.
I think that was pretty clear. Thank you for the question. And before I give the mic to Fariha, based on what your comment is, let me start off. So this is like a suggestion that the author is making because of the dispute that can happen among the people of the truth. So what happens is, hey, I have some conversations going on, and there's some kind of imposement that starts happening, and just to say, hey, I am the one who holds that truth. So to avoid those kind of situations, to avoid the discordance between individuals that are discussing a matter, so it is better as an approach to avoid that dispute, that discordance. And that is why it is better to, if you understand that, hey, this is individual person is also on the same path, in the same straight path that I think, which is towards the understanding relationship with the absolute truth, then I disregard all the minute little details of problems that may come. But Faria, please go ahead.
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. Like, like what I understand from what you said is like, why even the need, to make that kind of comparison? And just like Asim pointed out, it's just a suggestion from the author, where a situation arises in any kind of setting, any kind of topic. And so I think the whole point here is when I identify that I am what do you say, I'm living with my ego, or when I identify that if I'm making a judgment, it's with my ego, or I'm analyzing the case with my ego. If I'm able to identify that, then alhamdulillah, that's the first step. So then to save myself from falling into error, then that I have to consider what the author is mentioning. But, just like reassessing my case, like, who am I anyways? Like, what am I claiming ownership over? Do I even own anything? But I think it's just all about when one realizes that their ego is like really at play there.
Thank you, Fariha. Would anyone else like to add anything, or ask if you want to continue? Just let us know.
Sure, I just want to make sure I understood it right. If that's okay, can I go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
So basically it's for oneself. So that phrase there, so better than oneself. So basically it's for a person to actually have that humble kind of attitude, meaning to say, just like even Faria stated, to avoid that egoistic attitude within oneself. Am I understanding it right?
Fariha, would you like to add?
Yeah.
I know you're nodding your head.
Yeah, no, that's exactly how I was taking it as. Alhamdulillah, yeah, it's the whole egoistic side of things.
All right. Thank you.
That's clear. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Would anybody else want to say anything? Any comment? before we move, I think we're going to move on to the fifth cause for today. If everybody's okay, let's move on to the fifth cause. All right, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dispute and disagreement among the people of guidance are not the result of weakness, and the powerful union of the people of misguidance is not the result of strength. Rather, the lack of union of the people of guidance comes from the power that results from the support provided by perfect belief. And the union of the people of neglect and misguidance comes from the weakness and impotence they experience as a result of their lack of any inward support. The weak form powerful unions precisely because of their need for union. And there's a footnote for that, what the union is. Among the most powerful and effective organizations in the West is the American Organization for Women's Rights and Liberty. Even though women are called the fair sex and are weak and delicate. Similarly, the organization of the Armenians, despite their weakness and small numbers when compared to other people, with its strong self-sacrificing behavior, provides another proof of our observation. So this union in terms of, as we see that there are a lot of unions, the trains, operating unions, teachers union, women's rights unions. So in the workers, many workers have their transit workers union. They have that because, there's a weakness in the individual's say to what the management is imposing, and they want to, maybe they want to fight for the equal pay, but if they cannot say it out by themselves, so there's a union that is formed, and maybe for office positions, like everybody should have equal rights in their working conditions, rights to certain services. So there are unions which are formed. But let's continue on reading. So lions do not need union like foxes, and therefore live as individuals. So lions, because they do not need union, they are very powerful and strong. Foxes are kind of weak, and therefore lions live as individuals, whereas wild goats form a herd to protect themselves against wolves. The community and collective personality of the weak is strong, and the community and collective personality of the strong is weak. The community and the collective personality of the weak is strong. And the community and collective personality of the strong is weak. That's an interesting phrase. The community and collective personality of the weak is strong. So basically the union, which forms a collective personality, all the weak is strong, and the community and collective personality of the strong is weak. There is a subtle allusion to this in the Quran, in the words, and quote, and women in the city said, which is chapter 12, verse 30 from the Quran. And women in the city said, the verb said being in the masculine form, although it should be feminine, for two reasons. Women is a feminine noun and also a plural, so-called broken plurals in Arabic are always regarded as feminine. So it's interesting in the phrase, and women in the city said is to be in the masculine form. That's how it's written in the Quran, where in the grammatically we would expect it to be in feminine. So there's a purpose in that particular way the phrase is. But by contrast, see the words, the desert Arabs said, and this is from the Quran, chapter 49, verse 14, where the verb said, in this case, being in the feminine, even though its subject designates a community of men. Herein lies an indication that an association of weak, meek, and soft women gains strength, toughness, and force, and even acquires a certain kind of virility or strength. The use of the masculine form of the verb is therefore most appropriate. So, because of that union, it gains strength and toughness. So, the verb masculine, generally associated with strength, is used. So, the use of the masculine form of the verb is therefore most appropriate. Strong men, by contrast, and in particular Bedouin Arabs, trust in their own strength. Therefore, their associations are weak, for they assume a stance of softness and caution and take on a kind of femininity, for which the use of the feminine form of the verb is most suitable. Similarly, the people of truth submit to and place their reliance in the firm source of support that is belief in God. Similarly, the people of truth submit to and place their reliance in the firm source of support that is belief in God. Hence, they do not present their needs to others or request aid and assistance from them. If they do sometimes make the request, they will not adhere to the persons concerned at all cost. But the worldly ignore in their worldly affairs the true source of support. The worldly fall into weakness and impotence, and experiencing an acute need of assistance, come together, sacrificing themselves wholeheartedly. The people of truth do not recognize and seek the true strength that is to be found in union. Hence, they fall into dispute as an evil and harmful consequence of this failure. So the people of truth do not recognize and seek the true strength that is to be found in union. Hence, the people of truth fall into dispute as an evil and harmful consequence of this failure. By contrast, the people of misguidance and falsehood perceive the strength to be found in union by virtue of their very weakness, and thus acquire union. By contrast, the people of misguidance and falsehood perceive the strength to be found in union by virtue of their very weakness, and thus acquire union, that most important means for the attainment of all goals. The cure and remedy for this disease of discord among the people of truth is to make one's rule of conduct the divine prohibition contained in this verse. Do not fall into dispute, lest you lose heart and your power depart. Quran chapter 8, verse 46. And the wise divine command for social life contained in this verse: work together for the sake of virtue and piety. Quran chapter 5, verse 3. One must further realize how harmful to Islam dispute is, and how it helps the people of misguidance to triumph over the people of truth, and then wholeheartedly and self-sacrificingly join the caravan of the people of truth with a sense of his own utter weakness and impotence. Finally, one must forget his own person, abandon hypocrisy and pretension, and lay hold of sincerity. All right. So that is the fifth cause. So let's go back to the first paragraph and see, now that we have a general idea where the author is emphasizing on the importance of union amongst individuals, and how in union there is strength. And what happens is, which I think we need to discuss a little bit, what's going on in terms of how do the people of guidance lose that union, or they don't feel the need for a union. Why is that there's, why is that happening? Why? Like the people of truth do not recognize and seek the true strength that is to be found in union. But so the case in the first paragraph is, at least, is made about that the dispute and disagreement that we see in the people of guidance is not because they're, because of weakness, or not the result of weakness. And the union of misguidance is not the result of strength, because there's a distinction between that is being made on what the people of guidance, what they are there for, what do they stand for. So there is a powerful support or a meaningful thing that they are adhering to, which is they're adhering to that absolute truth. And whereas the people of misguidance are just, to their holding on to the values of the external, worldly kind of values, just like the unions that are prevalent in the workforce in terms of equal pay, or, something, better working conditions. Is more external, like, rather than something that is, more human or more existential in terms of the meaning of your purpose in existence. Why are we here? Who brought us here? Or to the value in adhering to that absolute truth that I belong to that source of existence. And I have a question here from
Not a question.
Fariha. She wants a timeout.
Timeout. Yeah, sorry, I missed the part that you were saying, and the people of the truth value what? I got the part where people of the world, what they value. Yeah, that makes sense. But what about the people of the truth? Can you please?
So the people of the truth, as I understand, is because they have a guidance.
Yeah.
There's people of guidance, and they are establishing their relationship with the source of existence, which is that they understand that this universe has an owner. There's not, I don't exist just randomly or haphazardly, but I belong to the one who gives existence to the whole universe. And I am trying to prepare myself to go back to that source of my being. So there is that understanding in which what the people of guidance can kind of hold certain values, in that sense that there's a meaning to their life, to their journey here, and they work towards that preparation. So there's that value. I mean, if anybody else would like to add to this, or
As in, one gets really corrupted, and so they need guidance, like you said, in terms of going back to their source of existence, like the training to go back to their source of existence.
so the right path is there, that their objective is there, but the means, how we are going towards that path, as in the previous cause. So there's in that journey, in that means, is where the disconnection happens, where the ego, or self sufficiency, or when you go into that maybe a responsible role, and you think everybody who is under me, I'm the source of their benefiting from me. That kind of thing happens. So there's this concept, or this suggestion of, and the Quran is, this author is kind of sharing his ideas based on the principles he understood from the Quran and the teachings of the Quran. And one of them was that the union is a powerful tool that, although the people of misguidance are benefiting from it for whatever reason, but the people of guidance also need to benefit from that because it holds a lot of value. And I've been talking for a long time now, I feel. So I will give it a break. And basically in the first paragraph, I have a question on what does the author mean by perfect belief? I mean, I'm sure he doesn't mean, maybe it's a translation thing, but there's probably, I feel that the understanding of belonging to an absolute source, and that understanding is what constitutes that. But would anybody like to share their thoughts so far on, when the author says, rather the lack of, the people of guidance comes from the power that results from the support provided by perfect belief. So there is power that comes, right, for the people of guidance. And what is the support provided by perfect belief? All right, let's see some hands, please. Ali Marmer, please go ahead. Thank you.
Now, okay, let me join. Yeah. This is a good question because we understand that if the belief is perfect, so we will act in at least right way. It doesn't necessitate it. That's what we have to understand. I may be absolutely sure that the universe is created by an absolute being, omnipotent being, all-powerful being, but I may misbehave. I may still have my egoistic attitude towards the people around me. It doesn't necessitate that when I believe in God in the perfect way, it means full confidence. It doesn't guarantee that I will act in the perfect way. That's what we have to understand. For ourselves, for me, it also attracted my attention. I said, wow, are you sure, Ali, to myself, that really there's a creator and this creator is absolute one, must be, otherwise everything falls down and scattered, meaninglessness, etc. I say, yeah, I'm pretty sure. Okay, but how about my behavior towards my other friends? Oh, it is a completely different matter. I have to train, I have to educate, I have to review my actions in accordance with this belief. It needs training. One of them is a logical conclusion. The other one is something which goes on within our own self. Regarding who I am, I may be believing in God in the perfect way, and they said, since I am confident in my belief in God, so I am perfect as well. So that is the trap that I fall. It doesn't mean that you behave, your feelings, emotions are educated according to your perfect conclusion or according to your certain condition that you are sure about. That is why belief in God, as we have been studying this subject, is treated differently from sincerity, from being hypocrisy, not necessarily that I play, that I believe in God, but but in fact, I don't know. From pretension, it doesn't guarantee me. So I need to educate myself. And if I lack all this, only believe in God and confidence in the necessity of the existence of God does not train alone, not only this alone, does not train by emotional status. That's what I understood from my own experience. I know that I am a nasty guy.
Thank you, Brother Lee. That was good. I mean, I liked it. How you said about our behavior is important on how we act in this universe when we're interacting with the universe along with others. And the training of the feelings and my emotions is necessary and needed. Although logically I know that I belong to an absolute source, yes, I am convinced, but do I reflect that in my journey, in my behavior? And so my actions also need training. And Faria, we want to
Don't
add?
you think that that comes first and foremost? Like relationship with creation? Like forget about this logical conclusion, but in general, you interact with creation, your feelings, emotions are involved. So just shouldn't that come first and foremost before a logical conclusion?
Yeah, I agree. That comes before.
Or okay.
So now that you have made, I mean, I have come to a logical conclusion. Now what do I do with that conclusion?
Yes. So now I see how the logical conclusion will help me, because the relationship that I have with the creation, then I'm able to connect that to this logical conclusion. I mean, it doesn't really matter, but I feel that as a human being, that comes first and foremost,
Okay.
and then you connect it to the logical conclusion. I just wanted to share my
Sure.
2 cents. Thank
Sounds
you
good.
for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Please, if you have other comments, go ahead. I will be delighted to hear from you guys.
My gosh.
Anybody else would like to?
Yeah, I would be curious to know what people are thinking of this. What comes
Ask your
first?
question, please.
No, yeah, I'm just wondering, what do others think about this? What comes first, you think? The logical conclusion and then working out the relationship with creation, or the relationship with creation comes first and then you can connect that to the logical conclusion because you're like, whoa, what is all this interaction about? There must be a meaning to something. I don't know.
Okay.
Just throwing that
That's
out.
good. Would anybody like to take on it? Brother Ali, please go ahead.
Now, my relationship with the universe will be based on logical interaction. My conclusion also will be based on logical conclusion, and then I have to bring it back to my feelings. Does it fit into my human side, human feelings, human side? Am I happy with it? But this is all about, even after consulting my feelings, I conclude that there must be a creator. But after accepting or being confident about the necessity of existence of an absolute creator, if I conclude about it, but it has its own, if you like, process within itself. First, reasoning, and then confirmation of the human feelings.
Thank you, Brother Ali. Fariha,
I'm thinking.
you're thinking? Okay, good.
No, definitely everything involves reasoning, but at first step, there's an interaction with creation.
Yeah.
And obviously it's in a respectful way. It's not in a, just like how we treat every other human being. So there's this, to me, I mean, I don't know, but like, this is how I understand it. My interaction comes first, and then I make some conclusion out of it, the reasoning where, I question what are all these interactions for. And when I come to a logical conclusion, then I connect these feelings within my interaction to the logical conclusion.
Brother Ali, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much it's covered. My relationship, as far as the training of my feelings is concerned, my relationship with the universe is nothing to do with logical conclusion, but depending on my free will, what am I choosing? It means deciding about my intention. Do I want to impose myself, claiming that I have a strong belief in God, so that I am superior over those people who don't, or again, I can take a modest option. You look, as the text said earlier on, there is a probability that people may have their belief within themselves, and we don't know exactly how strong they are. Just I have to take care of my own responsibility. Probability means I cannot say that definitely I'm better than them. Now, there is an option that they may be better. Take it into consideration and act accordingly. It means that it is nothing to do with the logical interaction. Actually, if I use an ambiguous word, is it intentional interaction, which depends on my free will. What do I really want? Do I want to impose myself, or do I want to really acknowledge that there is a probability that the other people may be better than me? So give the option. That's a possibility. Give the possibility to this option and wait. Don't just jump into saying that I have a strong belief.
That's fair enough.
Well, how did we define strong belief again? My logical conclusion, I'm being confident with it, then there must be a necessarily existent one, and from there on, then I bring that into my interactions with the universe. Like that makes sense now, what you said, Brother Ali. From my logical conclusion, I bring it into my relation with the universe. Okay, but then how are we defining this perfect belief? I didn't quite catch it. What is a perfect belief? Is there such a thing as a perfect belief?
Brother Ali, go ahead.
This is only by definition. You cannot really say perfect belief in the absolute one, infinite one. How do you feel about it? How you are comfortable with it as a human being? It doesn't mean that if I am comfortable with my conclusion, I have a perfect belief. This is just by definition that even if your belief is perfect, still you may not have a perfect attitude towards other creatures, including human beings. So you be aware of it. So don't say that I feel pretty sure about my belief, so I have a perfect belief. No, you cannot judge. You don't know, because believe in the absolute one. How can you make sure that you have really comprehended the absolute? Just as far as you can, try to see the evidence in the universe and be sincere. It means intentionally be ready. If I come to a conclusion which convinces my feeling, my mind, then I will take it into my heart. It means my feelings, and evaluate there. If they are also comfortable, conclude and confirm. But that means belief is different from submission. What does it mean? In Quranic term, Iman is different from Islam. So you may say, I am really convinced that there is a creator, but I may not prefer to submit all my feelings to him and train my feelings according to my conclusion, logical conclusion. Still, at every level, we have free will. We choose from among two options. So I have to take care of my free will and watch out on which purpose, on what purpose I am choosing A or B. If I want to be on the right path, though I cannot guarantee, but as much as I can, because no one can guarantee that his or her belief is perfect We cannot define it. This text is talking about perfect belief by definition, not on personal level.
Alhamdulillah, that's very good. Thank you, Brother Ali and Fariha, for that exchange of ideas and understandings. That was good. So I think that makes sense now. So the lack of union of the people of guidance comes from the power that results from the support provided by perfect belief, as in by definition. And the union of people of neglect and misguidance comes from the weakness and impotence they experience as a result of their lack of any inward support. Yeah, so what is this? Yeah, I mean, I have inward support. Would anybody like to talk on what that is? What is inward support and lack of inward support? Anybody would like to share their thoughts on that?
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll try. Well, people are thinking. I think the example of the lion is pretty, I think, vivid for me. Like lions are just like, ooh, scary thing, like full of ego, as in lion can act just like individually, independently with their, independent from the rest of the animal kingdom. And so, yeah, they won't really form alliance as opposed to, if join alliance with each other to maybe do whatever they want to do, as opposed to other creatures, like the author mentions the goat. I don't know if they have some kind of ego like the lion. Lion thinks like, oh, I'm the king or the queen of the jungle. So the goat is just like the regular Joe in the animal kingdom, and they join alliance, and that becomes like a forte, that becomes like a strong group. So although from outside it may seem like, oh, weak species, but when they get together, it forms like very strong force. So it's like support, that's like a more stronger support as opposed to lion. It may seem like, oh, superficially, ooh, strong, thing, but then they won't even form an alliance. So I don't know if that answers your question, but you're saying, what does it mean? The experience is the result of their lack of any inward support.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Inward support.
So the example of the lion, externally, the lion seems strong, is strong actually. Right, and so it does.
Scary, yeah.
So
That it may seem scary too.
And they live as like individuals. So there's no real need to go in a groups or to form a union.
Yeah, because another characteristic of a lion is usually they're just like, roaming around, like full of ego, like the king.
Yeah.
If somebody bothers them, that's when they show their real act. So I think we can apply that also, the same case to the human being. So how the author is mentioning about the people of truth, I'm holding it. If somebody, starts questioning, or, you're having some kind of conversation, and if your ego is kind of attacked, then yeah, I think if it's not well trained, then you attack back. I don't know. I'm just speaking out loud. I don't even know if that helps.
No, that's fine. Anybody else would like to add anything or say something? Let me see. Any?
There's a hand up.
Beza, go ahead, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Thanks for all the comments. Very helpful. I think, and please feel free to chime in with your thoughts as well. The inward support, I think, refers to the fact that within human nature is the fact that we're all weak, right? The fact that we're all weak and impotent. So regardless of whether you may be a person of guidance or misguidance, this reality is something that one cannot I guess, ignore, for lack of a better word. So when it comes to the people of guidance, the way that I understand it is there's a recognition of this weakness, but it's immediately turned to using that vertical relationship to the source of existence, to their creator, to the maker. Whereas for the people of misguidance or neglect, this weakness, since there is no God in the image, then it is referred to or turned towards one another. So no matter which group of people I'm in, I still am face to face with this reality, but it's a matter of how do I address this? So as Faria was saying with the lion and the goat example that the author gives us here, it's the lion, I guess here then becomes the people of belief because they have this inner strength which comes from use it solely depending upon um, the means for the mean for the means. So not getting stuck within the horizontal relationship. Whereas the people of misguidance, because they get stuck within the horizontal relationships and they depend upon one another. And as the author says, like goats that form a herd, then they find strength in that. And it's interesting because the author is saying, as far as I understand it, that it's not that there isn't strength in being a herd or coming together, but the issue comes from when it's not. It's good that the people of guidance form this vertical relationship, but because, as the author says towards the end, he says the people of truth do not recognize and seek the true strength that is to be found in union. Hence, they fall into dispute as an evil and harmful consequence of this failure. So, if the lions were to also form herds, using the analogy, then they would become like super strong, and they would then totally not have any sort of internal dispute because they would recognize that other people are also, I guess, a means through which the creator can act, and the strength that lies in unity as opposed to kind of being like a lone wolf, so to say. I'm not sure if that completely answers your question, but feel free to correct me or chime in. Thank you.
Thank you, Hpeza, for that comment. Of course, all comments are helpful. That's what we're trying to learn here. And I also, what I understood initially from the inward support is basically what's the foundation, within the human being. Although we are all, as created beings, we are all weak, but is there, to that weakness, do we have that point of support that we look for, right? And in the people of guidance, there is that point of support, and which is in the absolute truth that if they realize that, so that is the, but in the unions or in the weak kind of people of misguidance, there is no really point of support because everything is within the universe and everything is bound to perish, is bound to be dead, temporal. So that was one understanding, but I also like the understanding and Faria shared also about that point of support being the need for the us being weak within the nature of beings and looking for that union to form that bond. So if anybody else would like to add or say anything, please go ahead. But since the strong do not feel a similar need, because the strong, as you said, like the lions, they feel that there is that strength within that is already there. They have that, with that support that there is belonging to that point of support, that belonging to that absolute source. So there is no need for any of those it feels that the strong feel their self-sufficiency or that individualism. But that Beza kind of pointed out that it's important that if the lions who are maybe seeing that self-sufficiency only because of their point of support, otherwise there is no real self-sufficiency, but only that strength comes from that realizing that we belong to an absolute source. So in that sense, yeah, then the union of that mentality, that people of guidance would form a really strong, a good stronghold. Brother Ali, please go ahead.
In the original text, the inner support is used for kalp. It means the people of misguidance do not have confidence in their heart. They are always in a weak point, fragile kalp, fragile heart, because their heart doesn't have a point of support so that they will feel confidence. For example, the believer says, okay, I trust in God and I don't need the reward from the people. I need the reward from my creator. I don't care about people, what they think of me. But the people of misguidance lack this. It is explained, but I checked the original text. It says heart. So their heart is weak, trembling. Anytime they can die and lose the opportunity of the taste, the pleasure, luxury of this world. So they feel weak. They had to unite in order to make sure that they are making most of the moment they are living in this world. So they accept every kind of support. They are expecting the support of other people in order to be successful in the moment's pleasure. So they can enjoy their life. They cannot risk their life for any reason at all. It doesn't mean that the people of guidance can risk their lives. But if they believe, people of guidance believes in the hereafter and the reward from the creator, so they are not really worrying about the union that needs to be established among the believers. If this is why it is not justified. That is why the author is saying this shows that not the weakness in power, but weakness in sincerity. Sincerity means, yes, don't trust yourself. Don't put yourself in the front. Don't be so don't have a so strong self-confidence. Be careful. That's what I feel that the text is emphasizing on.
Thank you, Brother Ali. I think that brings us to the last few sentences of that paragraph. That clarification helped actually to understand how he says, similarly, the people of truth submit to and place their reliance in the firm source of support, that is belief in God. Hence, they do not present their needs to others or request aid and assistance from them. If they do sometimes make the request, they will not adhere to the persons concerned at all cost. But as the weakness or the weakness of heart, as you, Brother Ali, kind of pointed out, at that that lack of inward support, always being with no confidence, always being scared, oh, something might happen, because there's no confidence in that absolute source, or there's an absolute source, or that there's no point of support. So the worldly ignore in their worldly affairs the true source of support. So that true source of support, which is the one that is running the universe, and every individual is ignored. There's no confidence there. So they fall into weakness and impotence and experiencing an acute need of assistance. So whatever union they can hold on to, whatever kind of assistance, they'll just take it and come together, sacrificing themselves wholeheartedly. Yep. So that kind of ties into what Brother Lee was sharing. Thank you for that.
It's interesting how human beings are related to animal characteristics.
Can you say that louder, please?
Oh God. I was just saying that it's interesting how human beings are related to animal characteristics. I mean, I used to have a friend, like he would talk a lot about this, and now it makes more sense in terms of, you know, personality traits and everything. I don't know.
So you mean like the wild goats kind of?
Yeah, like you can see
Mentality.
human beings, like, yeah, who's acting like what. I mean, we can see that in our daily lives.
Sounds good. Thank you, Fariha. Farha, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for all the comments. I perhaps have a little bit of a naive thought and question. So it appears that because the people of guidance, they are in search of and motivated by or working towards the inner reward. And we talked about this in previous discussions, that the reward is unknown for the people of guidance. And it is also not of the nature of this universe. And so it's something that cannot be, you know, it's not a measurable sort of goal or reward, as opposed to people of misguidance, where they can measure their success here and they can sort of calibrate whether or not their efforts are, you know, working or not. So for maybe I'm going to give a vague example, like in history, let's say, a strength of a certain group typically was also judged by how much land or area they conquered, their influence in culture, power, etc. And in today's world, when we map that, we see, and this is a hypothesis, you know, people can correct me, but we generally see that we are under the influence of, you know, a secular way of life. Western nations seem to be powerful economically, ideologically, you know, they seem to be united as far as their purposes are concerned. So in today's world, as we think about, you know, unity amongst or coming together of the people of guidance, are we then only looking at it towards from the perspective of how it internally leaves us stronger in our faith without necessarily having a physical manifestation, such as, you know, some markers of our way of life and how our society is, as in the society of the people of guidance? Is that fair to say that our the benchmark of those of the people of guidance and, you know, perfect belief, as it is mentioned here, is not necessarily to be manifested in our social lives or in our community lives, in our political lives? That may not, is that not a necessity anymore or the advantage or the byproduct of coming together? Is it just a matter of our faith, our inward sense of connection and understanding of our reality, a you know, a benchmark or a consequence of unity? So that's my thought for now.
Thank you, Farah. Can I ask you a question also? So in terms of benchmark, how do you define the benchmark of the people of misguidance?
So I'll talk about it from a very practical perspective. Like, for example, if we and these are granted, these are pretty vague, but I'll try to be more specific, as much as possible. For example, when we look at standards of living, access to certain, let's say, clean water, education, infrastructure, standards of life, we generally see that people are seeking this in Western nations. We see a general pattern of immigration for economic reasons, such as many of us have left our homelands to have come here because we see that this is something made accessible in the life in Western nations for a wide group of individuals, generally speaking, not just for the rich, but available or accessible to a range of people in different social classes and um, economic backgrounds. Similarly, I think the screen stopped sharing, so I think things are still connected.
Yeah, Hamim is working on it.
Okay, all right. So does that help give you a sense of, a benchmark?
Yeah, thank you, Farah. That does tell me what the benchmark is.
Like from a practical life standpoint.
Yeah. So would anybody like to answer Farah's concern about what is the benchmark and how it fits within the people of guidance? What kind of benchmark are we supposed
Like what
to
could
get?
be the practical sort of benchmarks, or do they even need to be in today's time, let's say? It might be different for every era, but in our time today, like what does that practical expression of the unity of people of guidance look like, or needs to look like?
Yeah. So the question is out there. Anybody would like to answer that? Please raise your hand.
Maybe
So,
moderator, I will ask you if you allow. Do you
yeah.
see this as as a point of concern or issue, or according to you, like, what is your opinion on whether this is a point of concern for the, let's say, people like us who come together and are working on trying to understand their faith and strengthen it in by studying together, for example?
Correct. Yeah. In the union, what kind of benchmarks would I seek in terms of the progress I'm making? That's how I'm looking at, as being a student of the Quran, or, the one who is trying to seek guidance. And the benchmark for me is mostly, I would say, personal, in terms of how I view and see the world and how I work with my feelings and my interactions with everyone. So I myself would know exactly where I stand. And of course, I am not the one who's going to judge somebody else, or, how they stand. But the thing with the union, it gives me more confidence that, yes, I am joining everyone for the same cause. It builds that it kind of builds my confidence, I would say. And just along with the whole universe, in terms of recognizing who my Lord is, I joined that glorification, if you may say. And that just adds to the strength in unity.
With the universe, you're saying.
But I would like to also see if anybody else would like to add or say anything to that. I mean, Farah, would you like to continue, or does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think, for example, it doesn't need to be, I see this as, like we individually benefiting from a union can in ways be also like in our own individual lives, in our own particular jobs and positions in society, be, I believe that there is some sort of manifestation of understanding in the way that we, let's say, perform in our professional lives with family, friends, general community. And it doesn't need to be, let's say, as I gave the example of some time in history, like, a particular force conquers a certain amount of land, and that shows, okay, they are a united group of people with a, force and strength. But rather it can be a more implied, let's say, in our own coming together and benefiting individually, and then going in our own separate lives and manifesting that, also is a has an or a method of progress, or I guess manifestation in our lives. We can see it in, let's say, in our interactions with others. Like I'm saying it can appear to be without a physical manifestation, but in essence it exists. In spirit, in concept, in belief, it exists. So maybe perhaps for our times, this is the mode that it takes. So yeah.
Thank you, Farah. Faria, would you like to add?
Yeah, Farah, this is actually a good point you're bringing up as far as like the social construct of societies in general is concerned. And I think it all also, it encompasses one's belief aspect as well. So you know how we said that the goal is what, everybody, we're looking for the ultimate goal, but what matters at the end of the day is just how do I reach that goal. So within that, everything that we go on doing becomes means. So like, taking care of any sort of societal things, like, I don't know, building infrastructure or all those things that's out there. I think these just becomes a mean for us to reach the target. So, I mean, that's how I sort of took your interesting comment as.
Yeah, thank you. And with unity, you also become like a strong group of lions in terms of strength, upholding the absolute truth as a group, not as an individual,
Lions work as individuals.
but as a group.
Mr. Raphael.
So we have a few minutes left, but I wanted to go into the verse. Yeah. I mean, what we were discussing with first comment about work together for the sake of virtue and piety, Quran chapter 5 verse 3. I think that is easy in the social life. Why for the social life contain this verse? In our social constructs, it does apply to work in union and sharing ideas just constructively. And the one above it is more of the falling into dispute and what that entails. And so that is not really forming a union and not really being constructive, but it's more destructive. So let's discuss that. Like, do not fall into dispute lest you lose heart and your power depart. Quran chapter 8 verse 46. So would anybody want to share their thoughts on this verse? Some folks we didn't hear from. this is a good opportunity to express your thoughts as well. So there's a problem definitely in dispute, right? I mean, discordance does not help, and this addition of that, your heart will become kind of corrupted, or you will lose that heart of yours, and that power that you hold on will not be there anymore. So even though if I feel that I have that, logically I've concluded that I will, I belong to an absolute source, but if I don't act or I don't disregard the feelings of others, and my behavior does not show any sign of sincerity, that how, or my feelings are not educated, and I haven't trained my way of acting in the right way, that goes towards the straight path or sirat al-mustaqim, then it is pretty disastrous for me as the individual, because that, I'm kind of losing that, whatever that stronghold. My relationship is kind of breaking apart with my source of existence when there is discordance. So that's how I'm kind of understanding this. But of course, please, if you have anything to say, please add to that. All right. And we have a few more, like maybe the last conclusion before a few more sentences to conclude that. Yeah, so one must realize how harmful to Islam dispute is, and how it helps the people of misguidance triumph, because if somebody is just fighting and has animosity between them, it becomes a weaker group of individuals, and it's easier to really manipulate them. Whereas somebody who is unified, has a strong union, and upholds it, is harder to really take advantage of that, because there's a strong bond between that group. So the social aspect does have an influence. And so join the caravan of the people of truth, and join that with a sense of their own utter, weakness and impotence. And I guess finding that point of support, and based on that, one joins the people of truth. And then the author says, forget his own person, abandon hypocrisy and pretension, and lay hold of sincerity. So it's easy to, say that, to abandon hypocrisy and forget his own person. I don't know how that works actually. Would anybody want to speak to that? How to forget his own person? What does that mean actually? Come on, please. Some
What's
hands.
the question?
What does it mean to forget his own person?
Oh, what?
Brother Ali, please go ahead.
So forgetting about one's own person as far as as far as being able to establish the union among the believers, people of truth. So it doesn't mean that when I'm living in the world, I should forget my own person. But as of course, I have to take care of my need. It is completely different from understanding that unity between the believers is really essential. So in order to be able to do this, the author says you have to forget your own person. And prior to this, he says, how can we do that? It is only possible with a sense of his own utter weakness and impotence. For example, I believe in God strongly. That is something else. How about establishing the unity among the believers so that the belief that I claim to have it must be protected against the assaults of the non-believers. How can I protect it? I cannot protect it. Belief itself, not my belief in God. Belief, the truth. In order to protect the truth, the people of truth must.
We lost you. The people of truth must know their reality or their position, that they are created and weak individuals.
Cliffhanger, what does it mean? I understand. I don't understand cliffhanger. H-based says, maybe you may explain it. No.
So we lost you, Brother Ali.
I am? How about now?
Now it's good. Please go ahead.
Yeah. There is something written, it attracts my attention. That's why, what's it? In order to protect belief itself, not my belief. Yeah. Okay, that is correct. Now, my belief may be so strong, but how about the idea of belief? It needs defense against the assaults of the non-believers. But in order to be able to defend it, I should stop disputing between believers. It means my fellow believing people, so that when we dispute, the non-believers or disbelievers will find the opportunity to attack. Look at these people. Even they claim that they hold on to the truth, but they're always in conflict between themselves. What are you expecting from them? So I will give you the opportunity to the people who want to attack belief itself. It is not right for me to give this opportunity to the to disbelievers. So I have to understand that I myself cannot do it. I am weak and impotence in order to protect belief in general. Well, I may have a very strong belief in God personally. That is completely different matter.
Thank you, Brother Ali. So, I mean, I'm thinking about this. So you said that, okay, I am a weak individual. So if I join or I support the people of belief and be concerned for the uphold of the belief, that's the attitude I need to take, because that's a different matter that I am a weak individual. I'm in need of my source of existence, but I am concerned with the collective or the uphold, the belief is being upheld. There is that the truth should prevail.
Mm-hmm. And abandon yourself means like abandoning the ego side of things. That's why this attitude is needed. So I be on the safe side,
Yeah.
so I avoid all this hypocrisy and all the negativities.
So there's one personal aspect that I have, and then there's a social aspect of my being. Right? Mm-hmm. My personal is my personal, but the social is instead of disputing and leaving my ego aside and then supporting, that strong union with the people of truth.
Even within my personal, it shouldn't become like, ooh, guess what? It's mine. As in, this is what makes sense to me. It's given to me. Like not even taking ownership over that. I would say.
Right. I like that. Thank you very much. Beautiful. Okay, so final comments, anyone? Anybody wants to share out? Otherwise, I think we've concluded this fifth cause, inshallah. Time is on, so time is up. So I think we'll conclude inshallah here. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka anta alimul hakim. Wa akhiru da'wahum alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Al-Fatiha. Alhamdulillah.